Hello, Claire.
Hi, good
It's
morning,
nice.
everyone.
Yeah, it's nice to see you here. It's evening in Vietnam now.
I know. Thank you so much for staying up.
Yeah, we live today, and I'm very interested about your story on pursuing your mission on helping women to change or transform their image from anxiety into authenticity. And when after we deep into that, I would love to know more about your story. How did you start with the journey that you're working right now?
Well, it's definitely quite a journey. It's quite a story. I'm not gonna lie. But a long story short, it was actually everything that was started like back in 2019, and that year was kind of also part of my uh, personal changes, breakdown moments, and then was also lots of like movings. And then job transfer because of my partners. So everything was just kind of like, oh, everything was all fell into places. And then, of course, at that time, because just whatever happens in life, you kind of just have to adapt to it. So 2019, when I was still living in Montreal at the time, and then was really because again was my husband's had another job transfer, and then I just like okay, and previous the year of 2019, I was also like I lost a job, started a new job, and then at the same time also because my husband was traveling a lot, I was traveling a lot for my own job too. And then so when he came back from the business trip and he told me, oh, we're moving again, so it's kind of like, oh my God, everything kind of brought me back 4 years ago when I actually at that time was similar story when I have to relocate it myself, left my
Mm,
job from Vancouver to Montreal. So when that happens, kind of like, oh my God, this is not happening again. But it's just what it is, what life bring you. And then when I moved to Toronto, in 2019, the late December, then I realized I started to have a lot of time to reflect, and I was kind of thinking what I want to do. And I knew that at the time I was working in a corporate, I was also suffering like anxieties because it's due to my job. And part of the thing was like I worked a long hours, and then you just
mm,
you didn't really always have the time to kind of like think of like what was happening. So when you used to work in the corporate world, and then my environment always had been really hectic and very busy, and I realized there was a part of pieces was missing inside me.
yeah.
And that's kind of like when I moved to Toronto, and then just a little bit before COVID, and I was like, oh my God, like what should I do now? And I didn't really have a very clear direction. In a way,
Mm,
I just didn't know what to do. And on top, I was like, oh my God, like everything was also shutting down. But I needed to find a way to find my creativity. So that's when I started to kind of like challenge myself. Okay, maybe I can start to share some of my creativity work on social. By that time, I was very afraid of showing up. I was really afraid of like showing my face. I was doing a lot of work that was really more behind the scene. And
yeah.
then that really took me a while. And when everything started to shift, it was like, when people ask me, hey, would you like to do a live with me? I was like, no, no, no. Like I don't think I'm comfortable. And then right away, I was going through different meetings, and then all the time I was just not feeling very comfortable, to talk about myself, to
Mm,
share, what I wanted to do. And it took a while. And every time when I have to do live or when I have to show up,
mm,
my heart and literally was like beeping, and then and on top I was like my anxiety started to kind of keep in, and I started to have all these like negative thoughts like, oh my God, like what would people think of me, am I doing
mm,
okay, am I feeling look okay, you start to have a lots of negative patterns that really build up. And I realized part of it was also because from the previous what I had, and then from my work environment, and then on top of it, I used to don't really pay much attention of how I feel. And then there
mm,
was a lot of time it just you all just on the go, like you're just always on the go, so you really did not have the time to really think. And I think that was kind of recall, just to that's when that made me to pause and realize, oh my God, yes, all those things, symptoms everyone talked about, all these like trend when people talk about what, like they talk about, oh, sabotaging, and then they talk about women tending to have a little more doubts, and then they, self-belief, and then
Yeah.
procrastinations, and then all those like anxiety, all those symptoms, and then I realized, oh, I just by clicking the box, I did have those issues, and so it took me a little while to really
Mm.
to heal myself, and then to really regain my confidence back. And obviously part of I was doing a lot meditation, and I still do. Like meditation is part of my morning routine, and then that's how I really, start to come back, and then bit by bit, piece by piece. That's kind of give you a little bit of stories
Yeah.
of how everything has become. Yeah.
Yeah. So talking about your anxiety, did you experience that when you were younger in your early 20s, or it only happened after a while you working in corporation or in business and other things?
So I think the anxieties, I didn't really have it when I was a kid. I was always very, I mean, like pretty, like I wouldn't say positive all the time, but in general, I'm like a happy person, and then
Mm,
I'm always like very active, and then I have always been very adventurous. So the
yeah.
anxieties, I really realized part of was it came, and then it built up probably the last several years, and then I think it was on top because it was constantly on the move, and then always I think like when you're in your 30s, and I moved a lot, and then I really
Mm,
just a matter to city, country to country, places to places.
yeah.
At the beginning in your 30s, you're like, okay, this is great, I love changes. But when you realize in your late 30s, um, when you're constantly moving, you're constantly on the go, part of was my belonging. I started to feel like, where do I
Mm,
belong? And then where, like, was trying to find my identity, and trying to see a place that I feel like I wanted just to settle. I wanted to feel at home. And then the fact is that because what happens was just part of my life, and then my husband's job,
mm,
and on top because he works in tennis industry, and then so it just that's just the natural his job. So I realized the fact that you know changes is always going to happen. And then so when every time when I moved, I had to restart again. I have to find
yeah.
another new job. And then it wasn't because my credential, or it wasn't because that I'm my experience in that. The fact it was just when you work for a new company, they looked at you, your CV, they look at, what have you done. The always one thing I got the most is, oh, you have a great experience, you have a great credential, your resume look good, but you moved a lot. So
Mm,
that was become a thing that really triggered me, because each time I
mm,
move, I need to restart. I need to restart again. You gain your experience, something happened in life, and then I have to move, and then I need to find another job, and then it just,
yeah.
you're constantly always restarting, always restarting. And I felt that
Mm,
was definitely part of the like that was definitely one of the reasons, but also I think because at the time when I was living in Montreal, winter time was like always, snowing, and then like it's like a long winter. If you know Canada, basically we have a long winters, and
yeah.
then especially in Montreal, and then I think on top when how it the anxiety really started to build up was also because my
Mm,
husband, he had a job that he always traveling at least 5 to 6 weeks average, right? So when he was away, I usually was all by myself. So my only thing that I relied on was my job, and I did like my job. Don't get me wrong, and I has always been very career orientated. But the thing is, I didn't really have the life and work balance.
mm,
Everything for me was just work, 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 and then I didn't feel kind of like you become a robot. You do the over and over again, and I didn't really have the time to check in my health. And then on top, when I lost
yeah.
the job and then I started a new job, I realized the only thing I have to prove is I have to work very hard, extremely harder, to prove. And then
Mm,
that's when I
mm,
started to have the anxieties. I think that started to build in because a lot of
yeah.
time I was by myself, and the only thing I did was just work. I just really didn't have the time. And then I started to realize I had the problems of isolating myself, and then I didn't
Oh,
feel so comfortable at the time when I was working in my corporate, my previous job, and then I didn't always feel comfortable of like talking to my colleagues, and I stopped sharing so much, and then part of it was
mm,
my insecurities. I didn't
yeah,
feel and then when I realized that really was part of the thing when you were in the box, you didn't really always have the time to check in. But when
yeah,
you started to depart yourself from the little box, that's when you realize, oh, you have some issues. And then
mm,
those was the same thing I realized, oh, every at that time I always got so scared of little things. For example, when I was driving on the road, I always feel like something could happen to me, and then I
oh,
couldn't sleep. I there were nights that I just couldn't sleep, and then I was having some insomnia, and then at nighttime I was just, like I tried to sleep, but you always have like all this like pressure and nightmare that was in your head, and then I
oh,
just that wasn't the time that I just thought it was all normal, right? And then you went to
mm,
work, I would always dress up, I looked good, but then I knew there was just something was missing, and I
yeah,
couldn't always feel like I fit in the
mm,
circle with my colleagues. So whenever they have a conversation, I couldn't always find myself like get into the conversation with them. So I started to also isolate it, and then my work was started to get very. It was very hectic, because
yeah,
when I used to do productions, so each collection we have to, build new collections, and then my job is kind of like crucial because you need to make sure everything is precise. So that was also a couple of times that I did make the mistake. Of course, I didn't get fired, but then I realized I'm always the type of person, I'm very detail orientated. But how did that happen? And I started to put a lot of fault in myself, and then that was also a
mm,
part of thing I started to accumulate even more worries and then more anxieties. And then I just started to picking everything I do, and I remember at that time, my pressure, I did not know why I was so stressful. I didn't even know why there was so much pressure. But I
yeah,
remember I just couldn't eat during lunchtime. And then there was time that my former boss would come and talk to me, and then just like, you know, I see there's lots of potential in you, but you don't seem like, you're very loose. And I just didn't know
oh,
why, but at that time I also didn't really have anybody to talk to. And then on top of the new job, you don't go into the office and talk about what's happening in your life, right? And then on top, my husband was always away.
mm,
And then so I remember a couple of times I would go to the washroom and I started to cry, and I was like, oh my God.
yeah,
And then I just couldn't eat, and I lost quite a bit of weight, but I just knew that in back of my head, I wasn't feeling satisfied. And then I wasn't sure like the work I was doing wasn't even fulfilling anymore.
mm,
And then so that was kind of like, I realized at that time, I didn't know I had anxiety because you didn't really have the time to go check in and Google. You just kind of keep
yeah,
going,
mm,
life goes on, you just kind of keep going. And then you just keep build up your emotion, you keep build up all this negative uh trying to think the negative sides of how you feel inside, and then you kind of just like building the wall more and more. And it was really hard to
mm,
find myself just like kind of tear down. But I realized the fact after when I moved to Toronto, and then I started to reflection, and I was like, okay, yeah, that was really part of like the issue. I have anxieties, and then so that's
mm,
definitely took a while to kind of like overcome.
mm,
Do I still have it? I mean, I think I try to copy with now, because when I feel nervous, when I feel like something is not going the right way, I try to stay
yeah,
calm. Would it
yeah,
would it always stay with me? Possible, but it's just I have learned to be wiser, and I pay more
mm,
attention of how I feel. And I think this is a
mm,
thing that a lots of people these days do
mm,
encounter, but they just don't pay the time to it. So I think that's why paying attention and being aware of like how you feel is so important. Yeah.
yeah. I have a question. Do you think that your working environment or the industry that you work in contribute to that? where because you work in fashion and beauty industry where you
Hmm.
have expectation to always represent yourself well and everything needs to be perfect and look good and everything. Do you think that a part is because of the expectation or how you expect yourself to perform in the industry?
I do think yes, part of it, but I also think it's the how you react to it too. And I think maybe I can only speak of my own personal experience because everyone is different. Everyone copy when it comes to stress, when everyone come to everyone react differently when it comes to pressures, right? But I think
Yeah.
definitely what I have learned, because just like you said, my environment has always been very competitive. And then it's a way of like, I think when you were a little bit younger, you kind of always think that you want to perform better because you do want to show off. You want to make a strong impression to your colleagues, to your former
Mm.
bosses, right? So,
Yeah.
and on top, I'm not so much now, have always been a perfectionist. So it means
Mm.
that I will always making sure that, okay, I'm very competitive. I want to make sure that my work is being recognized. My work is, it's being
Mm.
stand out. And a lot of time I started to also putting a lot of pressure on myself,
Yeah.
and then
Mm.
I'm the type of person that I don't really like to go and ask for help, right?
Mm.
Throughout all my career life.
Yeah.
And I realized that was also part of things because
Mm.
I used to compare a lot with the people around me too, because that just my environment. And maybe I think it's also, I realized when I started to, not in the corporate world or in the work that I used to do, and then I stepped out, I realized, oh yeah, I used to compare a lot. I'm not going to lie. And
Mm.
comparison is great when you're taking a good example, but when you start to compare yourself, and then which I used to do, I look at my colleagues, I look at my former colleagues, and I look at, well, why they're always do so much better than me, and then I feel like why they're next step up, and then why they get
Mm.
another better job. Oh my god, I hear like, oh, they got raised, and then they're traveling another country, and then they're doing this, and I was like, I work so hard as well.
Mm.
Why I have not gone to that level? So I push myself even harder, and then I just
Mm.
always dismiss my own credibility, my experience.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. Yes, I think part of it is also the work I have chosen, and in my industry,
Mm.
it tend to be a bit more competitive because it can be taken as like superficial, it's very materialistic, but I do love because there's good things that I've learned, but it's always about finding the balance of like, how can you still present and you can look good, but in your own way,
Yeah.
but not really comparing about what like others people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
So that is, I hope that kind of like explains to you,
Yeah.
how everything has like shifted. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking about your anxiety when being in front of the camera.
Hmm.
So before you you not someone who confident in the camera, and now you someone who can train people to be on
Yeah.
camera and be authentic in their
Yeah.
own skin in front of the camera. So it's a really big change, really big transformation in yourself in your personal life. So can you share more about what happened when you feel anxious in front of the camera? What thoughts come into your mind? And how did you work with that emotion to come to the stage of confidence?
That's a very good question. So I realized I wasn't the only person who had that issue during pandemics. Like a lot of people, they're just supernatural going on the camera. I mean, I have been always called, like, oh, you're very photogenic. Oh my God, you're just, But yes, in the past, I was, oh yeah. At certain times, things happens in life and you start to shut yourself down, right? So of course, when I first shift online and then learning how to navigate with social media, and then social media was never really my thing. I know marketings, I've done like merchandising, I work with like
Mm.
different like production teams, right, in the back end. But I wasn't somebody who's actually doing digital marketings or social media. So of course, to navigate myself and get myself into the whole online world, it wasn't easy. But it sounds so
Mm.
easy for lots of people because when you when you are someone who used to work in the office, or
Mm,
maybe you also in the creative industry. Yes, I was in the creative industry, but when you worked in the corporate, you worked in the office, and you kind of when you and then when you shift to online, and then everyone's like, oh, you need to do this,
mm,
and then
mm,
it makes it so easy, and then it's just so bombarded with like people. You had the misconception of thinking this is the way you need to do it in order to get the audience, in order to to
mm,
look famous or whatever, to look good. So there is I would say, I wouldn't want to use the word superficial. There's a mirror that is
yeah.
like, after one layer to another layer. So I just thought, hey, in order for me to do like this, I need to do like that, but I didn't really feel comfortable. So when I first started
Mm,
to get on live, and I felt awkward, I didn't feel like I was really being myself.
yeah.
On top was just because I was really also struggling, like, okay, what do I really want for long term? Do I want to look like a fashion influencer, which I didn't feel like that anymore? Do I want to be a beauty blogger? And again, I feel like no, even though I like those things, those are things that has in being my blog, but I didn't feel that's resonate with me anymore, right?
Mm,
So it took me
yeah.
a long struggle. And of course, every time I would have to show up online, right away, I'm like, oh my God, outfit okay? Okay, my God, do I look okay? Do I look like,
Mm,
and then my makeup and then that. So now you just started to build on this like, oh my God, why we have so much worries, right?
yeah.
And then each time when I go up, I'm like, what should I do to say? Do people even care about what I want to say? Do people even want to hear? Like my voice doesn't even matter. And those are was the symptoms that I realized a lot of women that when they moved, or maybe
Mm,
they're still afraid of looking at the camera because they have so much of the negative thoughts, and then that's pulling them behind. So
mm,
that was me.
yeah.
Like I was like literally thinking, okay, my anxiety, I would get stomach pain. And then every time I have to, like, oh my God, I do a deep breathe. And I just wasn't so natural. And then, like
Mm,
when your body language, when you don't feel it's natural, people can feel it. So
yeah.
definitely my facial expression is always looking very serious. And it's how did I overcome? So it's actually a good question. I knew the fact is there was something I wanted to share. I know I have so much more knowledge. I know I have a mission. I know I have
Mm,
something that I can really awaken, even just for one person, right? And that kind of gave me an inspiration and motivation. And then the end of the day, I feel like first I'm doing this for myself. I
mm,
don't do it for others. So
mm,
it took a
yeah.
while to really overcome and then really get comfortable of like talking to people, and then and then showing up online on the regular basis. And then and then of course I think another thing I did, and I think a lots of women will do, is we pick on ourselves all the time. Like even as right now, we want when I'm getting live on you, and I'm like, am I looking okay? Like you're trying to kind of pick up everything that could go wrong. But I just don't know why women do that so much. And then to a point, now I just turned my 40. I'm like, you know what? Whatever. I really just don't care
Mm,
so much anymore. And I think this was also another issue is women tend to pick on little things on their on their self. And I think
mm,
that's another thing I realized, okay, I am on a mission is, we can just go free to be free, and then use dress for yourself. You don't have to look perfect all the time because we're real women. We're not
yeah.
models. Even models, I work with tons of models apart, they are also real people too. They also go through their own problems if they just don't talk about it, right? So I think that's is how I overcome. I do every time when I feel like something inside of me, I have a fear, but I realize the goal is so much bigger because I know I have so much potential. I know I have so much that I can give. And I
Mm,
know that if I don't show up, then I won't be able to encourage other
mm,
people to show up. So that's kind of
mm,
helped me to push forward. And
mm.
so I hope that kind of like makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think uh, in order to beat that anxiety and also your worries in front of the camera or worry of being judged in front of the camera, you need to find a really strong motivation and the mission or the message that you want to share, or you feel like there's something meaningful that you want to give to the world. in order that need to be stronger than your fear of being in front of the camera. So
Yes.
during your time when you start being on social media, like when was when was your first time posting a video with your face on a camera, and for how long that you feel more comfortable after that first time?
So I think like during pandemic when it first started it, and then
It's
I
20,
was
2020 or 20.
I think 2020. So it was like really in the middle. I would probably like so that this is the funny thing. So I was recording, and then I looked. I didn't post. I didn't like it. I
Mm,
did just like everyone, you know.
yeah.
And then so I would record it. I'm like, and I started to, oh my god, no, 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 no. Like there's nothing. I'm just like, oh my god, who cares? I would just say no, no, no. And then it took a while until it was really that when people invited me, that would you like to do a live with me? I'm like, uh, really? Like, what do you want me to say? You know? And then that was kind of like it got me the motivation of,
Mm,
okay, people invited me, and then I started to use this as an excuse. So I need a
mm,
partner. I need accountability. I wasn't so
mm,
comfortable going live or doing video on my own because
yeah.
I was still holding myself back. I was still a bit scared. And then, so
Mm,
I needed to find a accountability partner. So
yeah.
I would invite people. And then that's when I started to, I made the focus, and which is also now become a thing, that I want to give the space for other women using my platform to share their message, to share what they do, and then their story, etc. So that is how I started to, got into more like 2020 around June, July. That's when I started to get more comfortable. But in the
Mm,
before, it was a struggle. But it also doesn't mean that even though when I have found the accountabilities, I try to go
mm,
find the people. I ask, hey, would you like to do a live with me? I would like to feature you. Every time it
yeah.
was still a little bit struggle because I'll have to think, oh my God, like you in the second you have this like vibration in your mind. Okay, would the person would say yes? And that's another thing. I was
Mm,
also a little bit afraid of approaching people too, even though I used to work in retail, but it just I was like, oh my God, people did not know me. Would they say yes? Would they say no? And then again, you kind of think, what would people think of you? And then at one point, I'm just like, oh, I'm just gonna go ask. So this becomes
mm,
much more easier after people say, oh yes, I would love to do it. I would love to do it. And so it become like something I would just do on a regular basis. And then I start to
yeah.
do a live with people. I invite
Mm,
them on. I feature them. I introduce them, and that's how I started to get a bit more comfortable. So it definitely took a while, and then I remembered I in 2020, the end of December, yes. So I started my YouTube, right? So when I was
mm.
doing YouTube, I was also like, oh my God, you look at all the people, and I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna have fun. I some
Mm.
of the beginning of my YouTube, I look super serious. You can go and check it out.
Ah.
And I'm like, and my mom will watch it. She's like, your content is great, but you look too serious.
Ah.
You need to relax. You did not seem like you had fun. You talk about all the color, you talk about fashion, you talk about clothes, but your face is so serious. And she was like,
Mm,
you need to relax a little bit, and then so
mm.
that's what I started to also, kind of like find myself, back how I used to, because I'm
Yeah.
always a type of person. I'm pretty easy. I'm very easygoing, and then but
Mm,
I try to go back to find uh, what used to make me happy, and then what used to make me like jiggling all the time, right?
mm, mm,
And
mm.
then so that's how I started to be like, the point is, okay, I just want to be me now. I really just, I'm just, it's too tiring at one point of your life.
Mm.
You always just kind of like looking at other people. And then that's how I started to like, okay, I just want to have fun. Whatever I do, I got to do for myself. And then the whole point is just to enjoy the process and have a laugh. And that's kind of
Mm.
how like it has become, um, it, it started to make everything so much easier. And then when you really just like, okay, stop worry about, the reason you do this is because maybe, you want to get famous, or you want to get money, or you want to, you want to grow fast, whatever, or you want your business to tremendously go into the next level. But that doesn't happen overnight, right? So I think when I
Mm.
started to take loads out of me, and then I started just
Mm.
a bit more fun, and then
Mm.
that stopped me to worry so much. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah. Also, there's one point that I want to ask, like in the past or in your childhood or in your teenager or when
Yeah.
you're younger, have you ever have that fear being rejected or being judged, or have you ever been bullied or have anyone attack you because you appear like something in workplace or any environments that give you that fear or that anxiety?
I would say I wasn't someone has built up fear childhood. I have to say, I mean, I was fortunate enough. I didn't really have like
Mm,
bullies in childhood,
mm,
in school. But the only thing was, I think, when I was really like in teenage or even before, I terrible with math. Like
mm,
I'm not good in math, and then
yeah.
so this was always something that it's kind of like academically, I wasn't good with math, and then I did okay with history, but I'm not gonna get into too details. But then so academically, I wasn't always perform the best, right?
Mm,
And then on top, I think that was also probably has kind of like I wasn't able to like some of my friends that was able to do really well in high school, and then they would go to university. Uh, and then I knew I wasn't the university type. I think, and then, but I always been very artistic. And I think
mm,
that was probably part of like as a growing up. I think part of my parents had a very like they're business people, and then they have always been very busy. But I wasn't. I would have to say like in my childhood, I have always been very independent, and then my
yeah.
mom brought me in a very independent ways, and I think it was throughout the moving training, and then from we our parents immigrants to
Mm,
Vancouver from Taiwan, and then I even before I lived in Singapore for a year, and then I was in boarding school for my grade 7th grade, but I have always been taught very independent, and then I think that is something that I always had that of course, financially, my parents are quite. I wasn't like growing up with like poor or anything. I pretty much is like
mm,
my educations and everything being paid and everything. But I think the one of the bigger thing that I now realize also because in my 20s and my parents they split, they divorced, right? And then
yeah.
so my parents, I think that part of was also it did trigger me, and then it did cause me. I now I realize, but that could be part of the reasons of like kind of hold me back, maybe in some part of like relationship, and then
Mm,
the fear of like of trusting people, and then so I have always been very open to people. I trust people, but when sometime in life you get hurt, then you start to hold yourself back, and then you have the mirror of like building
yeah.
yourself up. So that was something
Mm,
I've learned is I hold myself back because I wasn't always
mm,
comfortable about trusting people, and I wasn't always able to open up myself freely. So in a way, because I moved so much even in my high school, I
yeah.
like even in my high school, now you ask, in high school, my mom, like we were literally like just changing houses to another house. Every few years we moved, and then I changed in
Mm,
high school at least like 5 schools. It wasn't because I got kicked out. It just I did not lie something, and then I have a tendency of running away. So when I was in one high school, and then I feel, oh my god, it got really boring, I didn't like it. I was in boarding school with a whole bunch of girls, and I'm like, no, I don't like it anymore. And then I would go to a different school, and then my mom would move to another place, and then I didn't like it because it's just way too
mm,
many Asians. I didn't like it. I find the kids are just so spoiled, and then they all like, and I'm like, okay, no, I didn't like it. So I had a like I realized the fact is it become a pattern of me when I did not like
mm,
something, and I lived in a place for a few years, and then just like, okay, it's time to move. I want to move to the next place. So even in high school, I changed 5 different schools. I think at least we moved at least 4 houses, So it become a
Mm.
thing, and it's not good. I
Yeah.
realize the
Yeah.
fact when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, it's like you started to look at yourself, what's wrong with you, And then that's, I think this also has become an issue for me in my early 20s, because when I didn't like something, I just thought the only way for me is to run away, to escape, to run away different country, to run another city, to change another place. And that's another thing what I've learned throughout the last several years. And then you started to put your feet on the ground, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that is kind of how I would say everything is just kind of like, you fall in the right place, and you learn from your experience. And like you say, everything that triggers you, or everything have become a pattern since when you're young, so
Mm.
you realize, okay, sometimes life happens, of course, but there are things that you can also stop yourself from not doing it
Mm.
to your adulthood life. Yeah.
Yeah. How about in your working environment in corporation? Is there freedom of speech, or you have the freedom to express yourself in the workplace?
It's a yes and no, because I can literally, I thought I have always been very direct and very straightforward. So, um, when I didn't like something, and then I came from a very strong background in the retail. I was in cosmetic for years before I
Yeah.
went to corporate as well. And then, so long story short, so I've done little bit of everything. And
Mm.
one thing wasn't because I didn't want to also changing jobs after another job, but if the fact was, I'll use some of my stories. For example, when I used to work as a makeup artist, and then I have always been a very hard worker. I will work hours, and then I have always performed really well in my sales.
Yeah.
And when something, I used to have the thing is that if I work very hard, and
Mm.
then I show my performance, I would get the next raise up. And I have always want to work for bigger brands. I always want to work for a bigger company. That was one thing. I'm very brand driven. And then
Mm.
but of course things always didn't work out. And then at the time when I was still in Vancouver, so I realized, okay, I didn't really find what I was doing, and then I wanted to get into a bigger level. But the only way is I had to change a different direction. So I started to go into fashion. I still love the fact is, like doing the production part rather than being the retail part. And
Mm.
even though a part of the time I was also a content manager for YSL, but now just like, okay, I didn't want to do any more sales. I want to go back to more creativity things. So went back to visual merchandising, and I was doing merchandising, and that's when I started, okay, I got into more like marketing and merchandising, doing more window display, etc. Then of course, as I say, something happens and I had to move to Montreal. So when I went to Montreal, I had to start everything over again. I went back to school again. I took French, and then found a job, start everything over again. And then I realized the job I was doing wasn't giving what I need, because I stated I wanted to, do this and that. Of course, there's some restrictions. Well, I wasn't able to do what
Mm.
I want. So I got
Yeah.
into one Canadian fashion company, and then in Montreal. So I was hired as a system buyer. So that was the stories that when I first got in, I was super excited, because I was like, I want to get into, like buying and the production part. But of course, when there was some structure was happening at the time with the company, and then I had a talk with this senior director, and then the CEO. Well, not the CEO, was the senior director, and then the vice president, the vice president in the division. I did raise my voice up, and I asked,
Mm.
because they changed me to a different department. It wasn't what I liked it. They put me into accessory, and which at the time you stopped to doing so much of like design process. I had a conversation with the directors. I said I would like to get change. I would like to eventually move to back to where I was. Blah blah blah. I raised my volumes a few times. Had a like conversation.
Mm.
Had a few meetings, and then the fact is that few months, very shortly, I got let go for the job. I
Mm.
in my life, I had never got laid off. That was like the
Mm,
when I got laid off, it was overwhelmed. It was the fact that I was shocked, but I realized this was happening because I had to do something that really what my heart told me. And then I did put my voice up. Yes, I could have suck it up and then just like, it's fine, I'm just gonna do it. It's just a job, right? But the fact is I wasn't feeling happy. So I went and talked, went to talk to the HR too. But unfortunately, it
yeah.
happened to me, right? So that was also another fact that caused me a little bit extinct when I found another job because I realized, oh my God, if I share too much, if I talk too much of my volumes again,
Mm,
maybe what happened again with me, maybe I would got laid off
mm,
again. So it took
mm,
me a while, a few months to really overcome, even though I try not to think about it at the time, like, yes, even at that time, the entrepreneur journey did kick in. By reality, you just like, you know what, I have to find another job. I just, life had to carry on. You really did not think that, okay, I'm going to just start a job like this. No. So this was part of things that it also
mm,
hold me back when I got
yeah.
laid off. I went to look into very in depth why that happened to me. And then I
Mm,
always the type of person I would raise my volume. I would go say something. I'm the type of person I have a very strong integrities. But
yeah.
when it happens, and then of course I was shocked, and then I knew this what happened. Was
Mm,
I sad? Yes, but then I realized the fact it did help me when I went for another job interview, when I started to work for another company, I wasn't feeling myself fully anymore. I was afraid to talk about it. I
mm,
was like when I remember a couple of times I would at the time I was working for Aldo Productions and I was a system buying productions team. And then we talked about every time we need to talk about the process, and then I was always really afraid of to put my voice out because I feel like I'm really new. Maybe my voice is or my
mm,
opinion shouldn't really matter. Let's get the senior people talk about it. I'm just a learner. I need to just learn, and then that's when I started to also feel like, oh my God, am I even good at anything? Maybe I'm still not good. I
mm.
have to keep learning. So it's a degree of yes and no. Yeah.
Mm, yeah, I think a part of the reason why people are afraid being in front of the camera or talk about their opinions or share about something about themselves is that because they already have a mark, a negative mark in the past. Maybe like your experience you have because you say the truth about yourself, you say some up opinions that's truthful for you, but then you get laid off. So that's why some people, I think that's why some people who have the same or similar experience, they can feel the same way. They're afraid of voice or talk about their opinions. And it's the same in Vietnamese culture and also in my family. And also I have really bad experience with social media. I started being on video on social media since 2011, and I got a lot of negative feedbacks or like both negative and positive. People are like I have social bully and other things, and there was a time where it's really affect me and it really hold me back, and I don't want to show up on camera anymore. I don't want to show up in front of people anymore. So I think there always something that add up to that feeling of anxiety, and like what you say, the power of finding your true purpose and your mission can help you overcome that because you believe in yourself that you have the potential, and also you have like the purpose and you have a mission and a message to share. That's why you need to be in front of people and talk about it. You cannot hide from the camera or hide or shy away anymore. So that's a, I think that's a big step of overcome that anxiety that you made for yourself. And also for me it's the same. When you discover like what you here for, and then you need to share that message, and that's why you need to show up every day, or even you don't feel like, okay, I'm afraid, but I still need to show up. So right now you work with a woman in business, and what exactly the problem that you help women in business solving in their image when in front of cameras or something?
Right. So right now that I would say the how I help like women CEO or women in business, part of it is really helping them to align their brandings and their personalities. And because that this is something I've realized part of yes, video it's not gonna go away, right? So if you want to continue to thrive in the
Mm,
online world, and then how you also take from the traditional business into social media into a digital world, you're the first thing is before you start to build a business, you have the vision is how are you going to build your brand. You start to have that branding foundation
mm,
first, and then not and then that's also another thing I realize a lot of women they start to build their business, and then a couple years later they need to rebrand because they doesn't
mm,
feel like the communication, the message, the how they show up on social is really
mm,
aligned who they really are. And sometimes there's a misgap of like how they show up and then how their personality is not
mm,
aligning. So right now, like I started to help women in business, or even women are still in the corporate, and then they're in the transition that they
mm,
want to start a business, but they don't know how to brand themselves in the right way. That's when myself and then my business partner that we come in, so we really look into the whole branding process of helping you to build that foundation. And then from there, we look into, okay, I love the fact is really behind the scene. Okay, what is your mission? What is your value? And then why do you want to do this? For me, it's more impactful. And then part of the image is part of the branding. And it takes, but it's much more further. It's all part of the packaging of how you bring yourself. So this is how I
mm,
help. We really look into who you are as a person, what is your identity, what is your personality, and then we help you
mm,
to curate that
mm,
personality within your brand that speak for you. Start to look like the way how you show up, your brand color, your brand foundation. And then from there, of course, what's the next thing? How can we use video as part of the video marketing strategy, as part of the branding, and help you to kind of show up, and then using video to attract to your potential audience. So that is kind of like overall the process of it's like a one-stop
mm,
shop, and we help you from branding, and then help you to show up online using video, and
mm,
how you can really show up really fearlessly, and then to attract your potential audience and clients into under like basically into your brands. Yeah, who buy
yeah,
eventually will buy from you. Yeah.
yeah. So of the women that you used to work with, is there anyone that have anxiety in front of camera just like you?
There were some people. I mean, I would say there's a couple women that I have encountered. They didn't feel so comfortable in the beginnings, and then it's
Mm,
really part of it. Is really, you learn there's a strategy and how to be strategic when you're actually showing up. You really try to think of
mm,
like the other side of the person, what they really want to hear. So there's strategy,
mm,
which is also covered in part of our branding process development that we teach you of how to show up, how to do live, and how to really, make it like spicy and short
mm,
in a way that, your message gets heard and seen. So that's
mm,
definitely is another thing that I feel like even me, I've been doing it. I think everyone, every now and then, there's a room that we can always improve. Yeah. And then this
mm.
is all part of the branding development that we do for our clients. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your very like interesting story. Like when like how you were before and how you were after. And now you quit the corporation job and you start your own journey as an entrepreneur. You helping women in their business, building their brand. And that is something that very different. Like choose like changing from some as a position who always work in corporation into someone who work for your own business is very different, and you did it, and you take that leap to actually do what your calling telling you to do. And also yeah, and also show up and say and also share your mission and share your message to women and help other people so they can achieve the same. So that's something that very outstanding, and I think that is a very powerful, and it's not easy to go to that stage, and it takes a lot of courage and I know that it's also a lot of challenging time too. But you did it, and I definitely believe that you can also like can grow more and more and help more women, because I know that there's a lot of people feel the same way like you. They feel anxiety and they need someone to help them go through the process of being like comfortable and being like authenticity in with their own skin, in front of people, in front of like on the camera and on social media, and to share their messages. So, for every audience that's still watching our live stream, if you want to work with Claire on the image consultant and build your personal brand or your business brand, you can contact Claire through email and LinkedIn. And Claire, you can share more about like your last message to people on like transformation, or something that you feel like is very uh, helpful to share with the people who want to come to you and want to get help from you. What's the message to them?
Right. It's very simple. I think dare to go out and then share your message, and you only live for once. So if you don't share it now, when are you gonna do? And for me, the
Mm,
most important part is to be bold and be fearless. I think,
mm,
and be brave. I think that's the things that I would taken with myself, and show curiosities. Having the
mm.
curiosity, it will help you to take very far. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Claire. And thank you, everybody, to watch this live stream. And please contact Claire. And if you have any problem with your anxiety and you want to shift it into authenticity to show up and share your message, just don't hesitate to contact Claire. And thank you for watching the interview. Thank you, Claire, so much for your time and sharing with us your story.
Thank you so
Goodbye.
much. Bye.